Okay, so we're here to talk about the Purim holiday, right, which is coming up very soon. So we have to tell you about the story a little bit, and also about the customs and the laws of Purim, so we can fulfill everything properly and also understand what's going on, right? What's the history of it, and what's the purpose, and what's the motivation, all these things, right? We have to understand. So to start out, right, this whole thing, we have to understand what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with the Persian Empire, which was at that time, right, the superpower of that generation. This was after the destruction of the first temple, right before the building of the second temple, right? What happened was that there was two empires that ruled at that in that period. That period was 70 years between the destruction of the first one and the building of the second one. Two empires. The first empire was Babel, right? Babylon. So there, Nebuchadnezzar, right, was the king. He was the one who destroyed the Beit Hamikdash, Nebuchadnezzar. It was actually his servant, right, his general, Nebuzaradan. That was his name, Nebuzaradan. Yeah? So he's the one who destroyed everything. He came there, and then what happened was, right, that Nebuchadnezzar lived for quite a long time. He ruled over the whole world, Nebuchadnezzar. That's what the Chazal say, right? The whole world was in his hands, without any exception, right? No deviations, no nothing. Very powerful kingdom he had. After that, after he died, he ruled, they say, for about 45 years. Can you imagine? Long time. So, even longer than Trump, right? Longer than Bibi even more than Bibi. So, after that, his son took over, right? Who was his son? His name was Evil Merodach. Nice name, right? So, actually, right, they say about this guy that he was better than his father. He's more of a tzaddik, this guy. So what does that mean? He treated the Jews better. He was more, just. He took out the Jews from jail. The ones that were jailed. The king was also jailed from the kingdom. Was jailed. He took him out also. He allowed him to go back to his wife. There was all kinds of nice things that he did right after after he became king. This guy, Evi Merodach. So he was considered to be like a just king, more or less, right? Good guy, good king. So then what happened was, right, that after Evi Merodach, there was a third king who was also the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. Who was that? There was Belshazzar, right? So Belshazzar was a Rasha, That's the way, right? Belshazzar, right? So Belshazzar, he did something really. He was such a bad boy, this boy, right? Very bad. So what he did was, he was looking out to see if the Jews were going to be redeemed and go back to their homeland. Right? What does that mean? The prophet said, right? There was a prophet who prophesied. Where was this? In Jeremiah, right? Yirmiyahu. It says over there in Yirmiyahu that the Jews will be in exile for 70 years, and then they'll go back and rebuild the temple. That's what he said. So everybody knew this prophecy, right? The whole world knew about that. So Belshazzar also knew about it, right? But he was using it for his own, sick, crooked purposes. What does that mean? He was trying to see, right, that maybe the time passed and it didn't occur. So, that means the prophecy was like a fake, some kind of a phony thing. So this was what he was trying to figure out, you understand? Why? Because once he would see that it's phony, the prophecy didn't come true, so he would take advantage of that, right, and try to, to dominate the Jews, and try to, to treat them with a rough hand, with to rule over them with vigor. So what happened was, he made a calculation to figure out this 70 years, right, when the time was over. So he says, what did he do? He figured out 70 years, and according to his calculation, the time already passed by, and the Jews were not redeemed. So, but they say the Chazal.
How were they supposed to be redeemed?
Through God's hands, God has many. He has many. That's a very good question, by the way, what you're asking, because the truth is, right, that this depends. The Gemara says, Masechet Megillah, it depends on the merit of the Jews. In other words, if the Jews are righteous, if they merit, so it's going to be like a miraculous, intervention of God with prophets, just like Yoshua bin Nun took them into Eretz Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu. Miracles, 10 Commandments, this, fire, brimstone, right, all kinds of thunder, lightning, right, everything, right, the whole thing, yes. So this is the good option, you understand? But if the Jews don't merit that because they have sins, so what happens is then it occurs through a more lowly way, more humble way. What does that mean? That some foreign, right, goy, king will come and allow the Jews to come back, but under his domination. You know what I mean? He's still running the show, But he's telling the Jews, okay, I allow you to come back. Go back and build your temple. So they say the Chazal, right? The truth is that by Sheni, in the second temple, they didn't deserve to have a big redemption like that, miraculous. This, Hollywood production, everything, right? Didn't deserve that. So therefore, what happened was, right, that the Persian kings allowed them to go back. That's what happened, right? They say what happened, that there was a king, right, called Koresh, king of Persia. He was a second king, right, of the Persian Empire. The first one was Dariavesh, right? In English we call it Darius, right? Darius and Cyrus. Koresh, Cyrus. Close but no cigar, right? Whatever. Okay, so the point is like this, right? That Dariavesh ruled for a short amount of time, the first king, and then came Koresh. Right? So Koresh was a righteous man, they say, right? He was a straight guy, straight as an arrow, right? So what happened was, with the Navi prophets, one of the prophets wrote about Koresh that he will allow the Jews to come back and rebuild the temple. So when Koresh saw this, he was commanded to do so by God, to do this, he did it. He let the Jews go and tell them, rebuild your temple. Whoever wants to go back, go back. Start, he says, I'll supply you with the needs also, right? Whatever you need, wood, right, oil, all the supplies, everything. It's on me, on my kingdom. Don't have to pay a dime for that. This is what, right? So it turned out to be a very nice deal, whatever, that he gave them. Right.
The second temple was built at the same place as the first.
Of course, yes. It has to be like that, right? Because the sanctity is permanent, right, over there. You can't change it to a different place. So what happened was like this, right? That Koresh told them to go back and rebuild the temple. Cyrus. They say, by the way, they fault him also, Cyrus, a little bit. You know why? They say even though he allowed them to go back and rebuild the temple, but God told him a little bit more than that, actually. He didn't tell him just to go back and rebuild. He said, you build it. In other words, he wanted him to actually, to participate in the building as well. To participate in that. To actively, to go and build. But he didn't want to go that far, Koresh. He didn't, he was a little bit lazy, whatever, So he didn't do completely his job, but not bad, Not bad, it's 50, 1 out of 2 ain't bad, whatever. He did at least 1 out of 2. So, or 2 out of 3, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So that's what he did, Koresh. So what happened was that before this, right, was Belshazzar, who was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. So he calculated 70 years, and he was very happy, right, that day. He said, wow, look, the Jews haven't been redeemed. Wow, looks like I got them in my hands, huh? I can do whatever I want with them now. I have a free hand to do whatever I want. God, he went to vacation. Right, he went to Puerto Rico, for vacation, to rest for a little while. He's not here anymore, right? He left the scene. That's it, he's gone. So he says, oh, okay. So what did he do, right? In order to celebrate that, he made a party. Can you imagine? This guy was such a wicked man. He made a party to celebrate that the Jews were not redeemed. such a character like this, right? So, by the way, the Talmud in Masechet Megillah, it explains over there, what mistake did he make, right? In other words, we're saying it has to be 70 years. The Galut, the exile, and they have to rebuild the temple. So what kind of mistake was there? How can you make a mistake like that, right? We can't count 70 years? What's it with you, right? You didn't learn arithmetic in grade school? What happened with you, right? So the truth is, right, that the arithmetic he knew, but the problem was that he didn't know the starting point. You understand? This was the question. What does that mean? When do we start counting those 70 years, right? So he thought that we should start counting from the rise of the Babylonian Empire, right? In other words, when Nebuchadnezzar became king. You know what I mean? So he wanted to count from there for some reason.
When he became a king, was the temple already erected?
It was erected before that, right? Before that, right? He destroyed it, right? That's what we're saying. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, right? Okay, yeah. But he thought that the 70 years goes according to the kingdom of Babylon. So he said, right, once the kingdom of Babylon has gone for 70 years, and that's it. It's finished. It's over. It's
illogical.
Not so logical, right? Okay? Not so logical, but this was a mistake. He made a mistake. What can you do, right?
Should be counted since the 70 years that it was destroyed.
Can you imagine? Good. Oh, okay. It looks like you have a Jewish mind, but this guy wasn't Zocher to, didn't have a Jewish mind. So what happened was like this, right? That this guy, he miscalculated, and he made a party to celebrate, to boot, even to make it even worse. Right, one sin leads to another. First he miscalculated, which was also one. Then it led to another sin. So what was the sin that he did? You know what he did? Unbelievable, this guy, right? He took out the utensils of the Bet HaMikdash because they had it over there. What happened was that Nebuchadnezzar stole the utensils of the Bet HaMikdash. He pillaged everything. You know what I mean? There were some things that were left over, as we said, right? The Aron Kodesh, there were some things that were left over, buried over there. But he took a lot of the utensils, the drinking vessels, all the vessels that were used for the avodah, for the sacrifices, all these things. Some of them were made from gold, some of them from silver,
That's
right?
right.
All kinds of materials, right? Not because he needed the gold and silver. It was for status, you know. This was considered to be like right, status symbol. You understand? So what happened was right that Nebuchadnezzar put him in his storehouse, and then when the Persian Empire took over, right, the kingdom from Babylon, so they took out from the storage everything, and they took it to their capital, right? Instead of being in Babylon, it now was in all of a sudden in Persia. Right? Where was that? In Shushan Abirah. This was the capital of the Persian Empire. Shushan Abirah. Right? So what happened was that now they have it over there buried. So Belshazzar comes and takes it out. I'm sorry, this was before, right? Because he was a Babylonian king. Before it was moved right? Before it was moved to Persia. When he had it in his city. Right? So what happened was that he took it out. He took out the utensils and he made a party and he started to drink with them. You know, like him, his wife, you know, his servants, his ministers, making a party, you know, taking the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy of Holies, right, and using them for you know his dirty, filthy party, you know, drinking and Can you imagine such a thing like this? So what happened was right when God, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, saw this, that this Rasha did such a wicked thing like this, to take his utensils of the Bet HaMikdash and to use them for such a mundane purpose, so he killed him. You know, that day he died. That was the day that he died. That day that he made the party, Hakadosh Baruch Hu finished him off. You know, it's a whole story, by the way. What happened over there? How he got finished off? Whatever. Interesting story. Maybe we shouldn't go into it now. This is not the time. So anyway, the point is like this, right? That now comes the next round, right? This was the first round, right? Okay. So now we go to the next step, which is what? The Babylonian Empire. That night, by the way, the Babylonian Empire was conquered by Persia. That night that he took out those vessels, and he was killed. Right? He was drinking. Right? Exactly. You know why he was drinking, by the way? Because they were celebrating. That day they had a battle with Persia and they defeated them. Mm-hmm. So they thought, oh, you know, we won the war, you know, we're good. Now they're making a party. So all of a sudden, right, that night Persia came back, you know, surprised, attacked, you know, and they robbed them out. And he was killed also. That's what happened, right? Okay. So what happened was that now came the Persians and took all the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash and goes now to Persia. So now Shushan Abirah, this capital of Persia, over there, it's sitting there for a couple of generations, right? As we said, the first king was Darius, right? Second was Koresh. Now, as we said, right, Koresh was a kosher king. He was a kosher guy, right? So what happened was that there was, but afterwards came Achashverosh. You know what I mean? So Achashverosh, you know, he was big Ubeduri, you know? Ubeduri Seti, you know? He was a bad guy, this guy. Understand? Big Rasha. Okay. So what happened was, right, that even though Koresh sanctioned the building of the temple to commence, but what happened was that by the time that he died, the building was not finished yet. So they continued after he died. But what happened was that Achashverosh, he stopped it. You know, he was a Rasha, you know. He stopped the building. They made some kind of excuses, you know, some people came to him, you know, they filed a petition. You know how it is, right? They come to Congress over there, they start pressuring them. You know, all kinds of lobby groups, all kinds of lobbies. This, that, lobbying this, lobbying that, whatever. They bribe them, you know, with money and this, all kinds of threatening letters and this and that and all kinds of things. You know how it is, right? Politics, that's the way it works. They threaten him, whatever. So once they did that, Achashverosh, he stopped the building. So it was ceased. It was halted at that time. You understand? So he actually was very happy that he stopped it because he hated the Jews. He was anti-Semite. You know what I mean? So Achashverosh, what happened was, right, that he also now, look at this, right? See how wicked these kings are. He also made his calculation regarding the 70 years. And he also wanted to celebrate. In other words, he was also hoping that the 70 years would pass by and they would not be redeemed. So, he made his own calculation. That's what the Gemara says, right? Masechet Megillah. So they say in the Gemara, right, that he also made a mistake. Can you imagine two people made a calculation? Right. So what was the mistake of Achashverosh? They say in the Gemara that he calculated from the time that the see what happened was like this, right? That there was 3 exiles in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. He did it in 3 stages. The first, he came, he took the king, right, and he took his family, and he put another king in his place.
Jewish.
Right. Same family.
Right. He replaced the Jewish king.
Right. He replaced the Jewish king. He put a vassal over there. Vassal king. Puppet.
Yeah.
Whatever. But this puppet turned out to be a bad boy. He rebelled against him. You know what I mean? So then he came, right, and he also took him out. So what happened was the second time he came, he already took like a good amount of the populace. The best people, the big warriors, the soldiers. The big generals, the big ministers, the wise people, the big rabbis. He took a lot of people already. Second galut, it was like he really took a lot more. And then came the third one also, right? He destroyed everything. The third one was totally wiped out. Everything was wiped out. This was in 3 stages. It took several years, this whole thing, right? This was a whole big process. So what happened was that at that time, right, because there was several years, so he calculated from beginning, right? Beginning of the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar, when the first time he came. You understand? But the problem was that he wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to wait till the temple was actually destroyed. You understand? Okay, so that's why I told you they're not Jewish. So that's the reason. But anyway, another mistake. By the way, that's exactly what we said, right? That these guys, who come from the outside, they don't understand the Bible. They don't have to understand the Bible. They read the Bible, but they don't understand how to they make all kinds of crazy interpretations. So what happened was, right, that he also miscalculated. So now comes the story of Purim. You understand? This is where we come in. This is where we jump into the narrative over here, right? So what happens? The Jews now, right? This guy is making a party. What is he making a party for? For the same reason that Belshazzar made. Because the Jews were not redeemed according to his calculation. Yeah. Can you imagine? So, but this guy, he went all out, you understand? He didn't make like a small party just for his ministers, stuff like this. He made a worldwide party. This was like a world event over here. Something like all over the world. All the world is like watching and coming and being invited. All kinds of people from all kinds of countries. Every international event. Can you imagine? So not only that, right? But the Jews also he invited. Can you imagine? He invited the Jews too to celebrate their own downfall, as if. You understand? This is how wicked he was. How twisted his mind was, this guy. He invited the Jews to celebrate with him, right? That they were not redeemed. Amazing thing, right? It seems like the Jews didn't know about this, by the way. This whole his intentions, what they were. Probably they didn't know about it because if they knew, right? Otherwise, obviously they would have been insulted by that. But this guy was, had everything in his heart. He knew what he wanted. He was very clear on what he was. Right, yeah, whatever. Not subconsciously. He knew very well what he was doing, but he didn't reveal. He didn't reveal. Yeah. Right. He didn't reveal his intentions. So what happened was that the Jews now came to this party. Right? They themselves also showed up. So they say the Chazal. This is exactly why the Jews, right, were now liable to be wiped out. You know why? Because of this, the fact that they came to the party. Right? So now, if this is really the whole thing, they came to the party, for such a thing like this, you want to wipe out the Jewish people? It sounds a little bit too extreme, no? Okay, a lot of us go, to parties which we shouldn't go to there. We shouldn't be there at those parties. But, Hashem doesn't wipe everybody out because they go to a party which is forbidden. So what kind of thing is this? Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu wipe out the Jewish people just because they went to one bad party? So the truth is, right, that...
But they didn't even know that they went to a bad party.
Right. But the truth is, that there's several things going on over here. The Gemara says like this, right, by the way, about this. The truth is that it seems like some of the Jews probably knew what the purpose for the party was. There was some kind of inside information there. You know what I mean? So therefore, they really shouldn't have gone there. They shouldn't have celebrated their own downfall. But there are some Jews who do that. Self-hating Jews, we call them. What does that mean? Right? Right? Right, These people are self-hating Jews. So they enjoy also that the Jews are not, coming back and rebuilding and this and that. They also want that. They're also interested in that. This is exactly what we had. So these people came to the party, even though they knew exactly what the party was about. So therefore, they became liable to destruction. But the Gemara asks a question about that, by the way. It says, "What, did all the Jews come? What, every Jew came to the party? There's millions of Jews. What? You know what I mean? So why wipe the whole nation? Because of some fringe group that came over there and sat there. What's my fault? He went there. Can I stop him? What should I do? Should I hold him a gun to him instead? What can I do? He went. I didn't go. I wasn't there. Most of the Jews didn't go. That's what Gemara asks. Good question. No? So then why did Kadosh Baruch Hu want to wipe out all the Jews? So you know what the Gemara answers? The Gemara answers there was also a different reason there. That was just a small reason. The bigger reason was something else. What happened was that during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, what happened was he built a big golden idol, a giant edifice, right, which was some kind of idol, Avodah Zarah, and then a shape of a man. It was supposed to be like his shape, Nebuchadnezzar. So he brought the whole world to bow down to that idol, So the Jews also bowed down. This is what happened. Understand? So says the Gemara, this is why they were liable to destruction, because they bowed down to the idol of Nebuchadnezzar.
Were they threatened?
Yes, they were.
They were.
They were threatened.
So,
but you know what's the halacha, right? The halacha is that if there's so you know what the halacha is, right? The halacha is that person is not supposed to give up his life for doing mitzvot. So what does that mean? If a goy comes and tells you, listen, don't keep Shabbat, because if you do keep Shabbat, I'm going to kill you. Right? Right. If you keep Shabbat, I'll kill you. Right. I will kill you. Yeah. So, what's the halacha? The halacha is you should break the Shabbat and not be killed. Right? Your life is more important than Shabbat. That's the halacha. But there are three things, right? Three mitzvot that a person has to give up his life for that. One of them, right? One of them is Avodah Zarah. Oh, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Avodah Zarah. For Avodah Zarah, a person has to give up his life. He has to give up his life. You understand? So what does that mean? If somebody comes and tells you in public, especially in public, right? Everybody's watching. It's on, Fox, CNN, everywhere. Cable TV, blah blah. They're all watching this, and they come to you and they say, the guy tells you, listen, you have to bow down, or else you're dead. You have to give up your life for that. Not bow down with Avodah Zarah. There's also two other mitzvot that a person has to, right? One is for murder, right? And the other one is for Gilui Arayot, right? To commit adultery, something like that. Yeah.
If you bow down, it's rather you'd rather give up your life than bow down to another.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. The other one is Gilui Arayot, right? Adultery, these kinds of things. Promiscuity, to go with a married woman, homosexual, things like this. The third one is murder, right? Those are the three. For those three, a person has to give up his life. So now, right, what happened was that they didn't give up their life for that. They bowed down, except three people, right? There was three tzaddikim over there that did not give up their lives, that did not bow down, and the Nebuchadnezzar tried to kill them because of that, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu made them a miracle and saved them, right? Okay, that's a nice story, right? We're not going to talk about that now, but it's a little bit off the topic, whatever. But the point is, right, that now Kadosh Baruch Hu said, you bow down to the idol, you didn't kill yourself, okay, now I'll kill you now. Okay, so whatever you missed over there, we'll make it up over here, right? So the Gemara asked a question about that. You know what the question is? A very good question asked, right? Right to the point. The question is like this. Okay, but they didn't really mean it when they bowed down to the idol. It was just fake. In other words, they were just pretending. You know what I mean? You think they really wanted to do Avodah Zarah? No, they were just doing it, for fake. They didn't really have the intention to worship the idol. So you know what the Gemara answers? Gemara answers, therefore they really were not killed in the end. In other words, just like they faked it, Kadosh Baruch Hu also faked it. He told them, I'm also going to fake it. I'll pretend like I'm going to kill you, but in the end I won't. You understand? Like, he psyched us out. You understand? He psych out. That's what the Gemara says. Interesting, right? That's exactly what the Torah says, right? That Kadosh Baruch Hu pays everything midah keneged midah. Whatever you do, that's what he does to you. Just like you psyched out, he also psyched you out. Oh, you got scared? Too bad. He psyched you out, psych out. That's like that's what Gemara says. Okay, interesting. Okay, so let's go on, right? So another interesting thing, right, is that regarding. So what happened? That Nebuchadnezzar, as we said, gone. Now Achashverosh makes a party. This party had a lot of strange ingredients going on there. A lot of strange stuff going on there. Right? As it's described in the Megillah, in Masechet Megillah, also in the Gemara over there, it's described what actually was going on there, and all kinds of things like this. So a lot of interesting things which are stated about this party. First of all, right, some say that actually Nebuchadnezzar and Ahasuerus, when he invited the Jews over there, he actually brought them kosher food. He said, listen, I know you Jews eat kosher only, so no problem. I'll go to Baltimore. I'll get some black kosher over there, and I'll bring it to Washington D.C. No problem. That's what they used to do. The presidents, sometimes they used to invite Jews. They would go to Baltimore, which is very close to D.C., and they would bring black kosher and serve it to the Jews, right? Whatever. So, okay, nice gesture, right. That's what Bush did. Remember Bush, right? The 41, right? Bush 41. Okay, so anyway, the point is like this, right? That now he gave him kosher food, but that doesn't really, still doesn't make the grade. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowed to eat that. Why? Because if it's cooked by a goy, you're not allowed to eat kosher food like that. That's one thing, right? To inform you, right? But there was also some strange things over there in the party. Number one is that they say, right, that the party was very lavish. A king who rules over the whole world. You can imagine, like, what kind of party he's able to make. This was like super lavish party.
Nowhere spared.
Right, exactly. Nothing spared. You probably won't see this kind of party today anywhere in the world. You know what I mean? It was something out of this world, totally out of. So they say, right, that for instance, how amazing was this party? They say that the wine that there was being served there, right? Not exactly, like your, run in the mill, garden variety wine was being served there. They say that. Can you imagine such care was taken that every guest who was invited to the party, they had a list of everybody, whatever. Several thousand people probably, right, came there, whatever. So each one was served wine which was older than his age. So if this guy was 50 years old, he got wine that was 51 years old. Can you imagine? A lot of details over there. This was something like out of the ordinary, right? So can you imagine in the Gemara it's mentioned, right? These things, but it's darshaning from the Megillah, taking from the Megillah, extrapolating from there, right? That's the idea. So this was a very fancy, we're talking about like everybody had like couches, and chairs which were made out of gold and silver, and all kinds of like fancy embroidery, very, like very lavish stuff, which you're not going to find. You may find it for the president himself, but you're not going to find that for his guests. When he's inviting thousands of people, that's going to be, not going to be like that. So this guy was able to go all out. He went all the way. He went, he went for broke. You know what I mean? So the thing is like this, right? The Gemara says something amazing. The Gemara says that, what it is that if you've ever gone to one of these goyish parties, what do you see over there? You see, right, in the end, what do? They drink. They drink 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden they start making like these dirty jokes, and cursing, and this 4-letter words and all kinds of, nonsense, dirty jokes and, all kinds of things like this. That's exactly what they start to do over there, you understand? So they say, right, this is the difference between the Jewish people and them. What's the difference? The Jewish people, when they drink, they Shabbat, they get together for a meal, they drink wine, but they praise Hashem, they sing songs to Hashem, they say Divrei Torah. These people were all talking all the nonsense, all the Gornish over there. So what happened was, right, that they got into conversation over there. So it came down, to the usual, conversation, right? You know how it is, right? I'm sure you will find this familiar, right? So what they were talking about, right? Which ladies are the prettiest? Is it the Russian ones, the Slavic ladies, or the Israeli ladies, or the French ones? Right? Thank you. Right, so it goes like this, right? You know how it is, right? So they were like arguing. This one is saying, "This no, my nation, my country. You gotta come to my country, man. I'll show you what a real lady is." Things like this, right? So. Achashverosh in the end, right? He puts his foot down, over there. He's sitting there, listening to all this. He says, "Listen to me." He says, "Guys, let's get it straight over here. Let's make order, okay?" So he says, "You should know, my wife. I'm personally Persian, but my wife is Chaldean, right? What's Chaldean? That means that she was from Babylonia. She was, who his wife was? His wife was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Can you imagine? He was, he took a royal lady like this, and he married her, whatever." So he says, "There's nobody beautiful like her in the world." Like he says, I can guarantee you. He says, "Bring me any lady you want. I'll bring her out and I'll show you my wife." He says, "Nobody will be able to show a beautiful woman like this." He says, "I guarantee you. I'll take each and one of you to lunch. I'll wipe the floor with anybody." So they told him, yeah. He says, okay, let's see. So bring her out. Let's see how beautiful she is. So they weren't talking about, bringing her out in a business suit. You know what I mean? This was not the idea. Right? What they meant was bring her out naked. You understand? Birthday suit. You got the idea? So they. So.
I'm not done yet. Okay, can you? Because my car is halfway between your house and the Lotus. Go again.
So what happens is like this, right? Now comes Achashverosh. He says, "Well, you want to see her?" He says, "No problem." He says, "We're bringing her around the birthday suit." Wow. So right, sends her a message, right? King's handwriting, please come out in your birthday suit, right? No fancy stuff, no nothing. It's just right, exactly. That's it. Go on, like that. Right? So Vashti, right, gets the message. They bring it to her. They said the king has a message for you. He has a special request from you. So Vashti refused to come out like that. You understand? So the question is, why did she refuse, right? So the Chazal say over there in the Gemara, Masechet Megillah, she certainly didn't refuse because she was a very, honorable woman. This wasn't the reason why.
Not because she was modest.
Right. It wasn't her modesty, because these women are, they're also the same, just as the husbands were. The wives were the same also. They're also the same material. They say, by the way, in the Gemara, you see from here that usually the husband and wife are the same. You know what I mean? They're the same material. So what happens like this, right? They call her and they say, "Come in, in your birthday suit." So you know what she got very angry, incensed about this. Why did she get incensed? For what? What offended her? She actually wanted to come out and show herself. She was very beautiful, Nobody was like her. So what happened was, right, that she sends a letter back to Achashverosh, very nasty letter, So you know what the letter says? He says, you fool. He says, what kind of fool are you? Why? He says, my grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, when he was a king, he would drink 1,000, cups of wine, and he wouldn't get drunk. He was such a strong man, He must have been Georgian, this guy, Whatever. He would drink, and he would still be sober, He could still everything was holding good. He says, you drank a couple of extra cocktails, and now you're flying in the air. You fool! What are you talking about? You think I'm going to come out there naked? So the question is, right? As we said, she actually wanted to come out naked, So then why did she refuse? What's the reason why? So what the Chazal say? What happened was, right? Two things they say, right? Two things that happened. One is that this was a miracle that was made. The angels came and struck her, right? What does that mean? One angel came and struck her with tzarat, which is like a form of leprosy, whatever kind of thing. Not really leprosy, but something similar to that, where the skin, like white dots, you get, So she looked like a polka dotted lady. All of a sudden, she looked like a albino leopard, something like that. Can you imagine such a thing? So she was all of a sudden, she was disgusting the way she looked. So now, she's getting incensed at Achashverosh. They say there's another one, right? There's another opinion over there that says came Malach Gabriel, the angel Gabriel came and put a tail on her, like a monkey. All of a sudden, can you imagine? So because of that, she didn't want to come out. She looked like a fool.
But why did they do that?
Because they wanted to. I'll explain to you why. I'll explain to you what the reason.
Embarrass
is. No, because they wanted to get her killed. You understand? So what's the story over here, right? You have to understand a little background over here. The background story is like this. That they say, right, that Vashti, she was also a big Rasha. Just like her husband was a Rasha, she was also a Rasha. So what does that mean? She used to be a very cruel lady, this lady. What she used to do was like this, right? That she would take the Jewish women and make them strip down, no clothes, and work for her on Shabbat, do labor. On Shabbat with no clothing, walking around naked, to embarrass them, to disgrace them like this. That's what she used to do. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told her, that's what you do to my Jewish ladies? He says, I'm going to do that now to you, right? Same thing is going to be coming. You're going to have to come out naked, right? Let's see, huh? Right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to kill her and punish her because of what she did to the Jewish ladies. This is the reason why this happened to her. You understand?
Now, is the plot to kill Jewish, is it on or not yet?
No, this is before that. This is before that. Yeah. So now, right, comes back this right nasty message back to Achashverosh. He sees this, and he was already drunk. You know what I mean? He was totally sloshed. This guy. Right? So that means his anger, is now going to be very, very heavy. You know how it is. Some people get angry, they start to swing, start swinging. You know what I mean? You never know what they're going to hit, right? They may break the wall or somebody's head. You never know what's going to be, right? This guy came out already. He said, he says, this is what she does to me, huh? He doesn't want to come out to embarrass me like this, disgrace me. She didn't know. He didn't know what happened to her. He didn't know. He didn't realize, right? So what happened was that now he was very, very angry. So because of that, after the party was after the party was over, even before that, right, at that time, right there, he summoned his ministers. He had 7 main ministers, his cabinet, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of this, Secretary of that, right, or whatever. So he gathers them right there on the spot. Right, before he did that, you know what he did? Even before that, he first tried to ask the Jews what to do. You know what it is? Now, interesting, they say, right, that Achashverosh, on the one hand, he hated the Jews. On the other hand, he respected them very much. He knew how wise they were. He had a great deal of respect for them. Hate and respect. You know what I mean? It's like a double, yeah, 2 different things, right? He had both of them. So what happens is, right, that he gathers the Jewish rabbis, and he asks them, he says, my wife, this is what she did to me. She embarrassed me.
At the same part.
Right. Can you imagine? So Mordechai was also there, by the way. They say he was there, Mordechai. So they say, right, that he asked the Jewish rabbis, the chief judges, of the rabbis, the big rabbis. He asked them, he said, what should I do to my wife? This is a disgrace, it's a disgrace to the kingdom. When people are going to hear about this, they're going to make me a laughing stock out of me. Like a monkey, I'm going to be like a monkey. You know what I mean? This is a disgrace. In those days, by the way, the people were, in those days, there wasn't exactly equal rights, you know what I mean? Yes, we're going to Facebook and YouTube also, right? So, first Facebook and YouTube. So, now, interesting thing, like, this, right? Now, what happens is, after presentation. Okay, you can ask, no problem. Oh, after, we'll talk about that later, right. We'll talk about that later. So, I'll tell you later, presentation. I already solved the problem for them. I solved the problem. Yes, no problem. We already, after they told me, half hour after, I will already solve the problem. So, comes now, right, he asked the Jewish rabbis, what should I do, This is what you did to me.
Embarrassed.
So, the Jews, you know what they said, the rabbis? They looked at each other. And they all agreed. They nodded their heads, They know what they're going to say. Each one knows. Right, exactly. So they're looking. They come to the king and they say, "Listen, says, Your Honor, the king." He says, we don't have any more this wisdom to judge these kinds of cases. You know what I mean? Why? Because once we were exiled from our country, we lost our wisdom over there. The wisdom was the Shekhinah was over there. The divine presence was there. Once we're now out of our country, you don't have this wisdom anymore. He says, you know what? It says, we cannot answer you on this, right? So he says, go to Moab and Ammon, these countries. These rabbis, they're priests. They know how to answer these kind of questions. Don't ask us about this, right? So the question is, why didn't they want to answer her, right? To answer him. What was the reason why? That's it. Right? So the answer is very simple, right? That they knew that if they're going to tell him the truth about what she deserves, and something happens, right, he's going to blame them in the end. Yeah, exactly. Oh, why did you do this to me? This and that. What does that mean? That at that time he was drunk, you understand? So once he sobers up, he's going to realize what happened, and then he'll say, oh, you Jews, you caused this to me. So therefore the rabbis told him and said, you know what, Your Honor the king, we don't want to get involved in this kind of thing. With all due respect. Give the case to somebody else. Go to a different court, right? Go to the international court, right? The whatever it's called, right? In Hague, right? The international court in Hague. Go over there. Ask them what to do. So what happened was, right, that after the Jews refused to answer the question, so then all of a sudden, right, he goes to his ministers. He convenes them, right? His cabinet. So they say, right, that these were the main ministers that he had, and there were 7 of them. And he asked them, he says, okay, he says, you are the wise men of the country. Tell me what to do with this situation. You have to give me advice right now. You have to do it right away. So there shouldn't be a disgrace. Because once the name gets out, right, it's going to be a total sham. A total catastrophe. So one of them answers, right? So they say, right, by the way, it's counted the 7 ministers, what their names were in the Megillah, right? And the first is going to be the most important one. You understand? The last one is going to be least important. Like, that's the way it should be, right? So the last one was called Memuchan, right? Who was that? That was Haman, right? Haman was the minister. So you understand? So Haman was the last. What does that mean? He was the youngest, least experienced minister that he had. But he jumped up, he said, I'll tell you what to do. He says, don't worry, I'll tell you. Right, exactly. He jumped right out of turn, right, exactly, right. He jumps in, I'll tell you. So it tells him, okay, what do you say? He says, you know what's going to be, right? He says, if you allow this kind of thing to go on without any punishment, you know what's going to be, right? All the men in the country, in the kingdom are going to become a laughing stock. All their wives are going to disgrace them, not listen to what they say. It's going to be like a total rebellion, The husbands are going to lose their power. We're going to become like, right, exactly, yeah. We're going to become a joke. So he says, therefore, I honor the king. You have to kill your wife. The queen has to be killed. There's no choice, right? So Achashverosh, right, hears this, and he's drunk. He's still drunk, you understand? So he listens to Haman. He realizes, right, there's no choice. They realized that this was the right thing to do, according to the situation. They killed her, executed her, So then what happens is, right, that in the morning, after he sobers up, hangover, this kind of thing, right, tomato juice, this, vodka, whatever, he sobers up, and then he realizes, wow, he says, my wife is dead. Can you imagine? This is terrible. He came to terms with the reality. You understand? I lost my wife, and she was the most beautiful thing in the world. Nobody beautiful like her.
Did he have a lot of wives at that time?
Well, these kings always had a lot of girlfriends. Right, exactly. They had like a harem, of women.
But she was number
one. She was the main wife, exactly. That's the way, right? She had the status, She had the status. And she herself was royalty, in a sense, so it was fitting for her, in that sense, right? So what happened was that now he realizes, right? So he starts to come to terms with the reality. So he says, I have no choice, I'm going to have to find somebody else. So what he does is, right, in order to find a woman who's in that same stature, the same caliber, of beauty like that she had, so he says, I have to, do like a very big effort over here, This is not going to be like just looking around, like in the websites, Go over here to this website, that website. I have to find somebody who's fitting, beautiful, gorgeous, like just like my wife was. So what they did was they made an announcement, that the king is looking for a new wife, So whoever has like a virgin daughter should bring her to the palace, right? And we will examine her, right? Right. So we will examine her, and we will, literally examine. You know what I mean? If you know what I mean, examine literally. Right. So why do I say that? By the way, why do I stress that? The point is, right? The Chazal say, the Gemara says over there in the Megillah, that this was actually a foolish thing what he did. What does that mean? That they knew basically they want to round up hundreds and thousands of women like this. In the end, only one will be taken. Everybody else will be rejected. You know what I mean? So they said, listen, what are the chances that we're going to be picked? One out of 10,000. You know what I mean? So why should we go for this? So what they did was they hid their daughters. The ones who had daughters, they hid them. They said, I don't want to give her over like this. Give her over like this. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be a sham. Right? So therefore, they say this was foolish what he did, right? Because he announced it like that, in public. So he caused them to actually hide their daughters. So what happens is like this, right? That nevertheless, who gets taken into this whole, harem, right? Esther, right? Gets taken in, right? So what happened was that Mordechai, as the Chazal say, right? He was already married with her at that time. He was married to her. What's the story, by the way, behind this? What's this family? Where did it come from? So they say, right, that both Esther and Mordechai were from the tribe of Binyamin. Right? What does that mean? They came from the family of Shaul, the first king that there was in Israel, right? Before David came along. So what happened was, right, that there was also, Shaul also had an uncle who was the chief justice of the high court at that time, right? What was that? Shimi ben Gera, that was his name, right? So he was an uncle of Shaul. So what happened was, right, that Mordechai was from Shimi ben Gera, the uncle of Shaul, and Esther was actually from Shaul himself. This was the lineage that they had. Understand? They both came from a royal family, basically. Was the idea, right? But what happened was, right, that Esther was the niece of Mordechai. You understand? So they say, by the way, the Chazal, that it's a mitzvah to marry your niece, So therefore he married her. Even though they're relatives, it's allowed to do that. It's a mitzvah even, right? So he married her, and she was also an orphan. She had no, her parents, right? Whatever. She was an orphan lady. So he said, I might as well take her in, and make her a part of the family. Why not, So he married her. She was very young at that time. So what happens is like this, right? That they didn't tell, right? They didn't tell to the king's people that she was married, because otherwise, what would happen? They would kill him and kidnap her. Whatever. He was afraid of that.
But he asked for a virgin. She was no longer.
I'm sorry? It's true. It's true what you were saying. She was not a virgin. But anyway, they took her because of her beauty. You understand? So this is the reason why she was super, super beautiful. That's what they say, right? Chazal. She was extremely beautiful lady, right? Whatever. Like our mothers, Sarah and, Rivka and, Rachel. They were very beautiful women. They say that she was on that caliber. Some say, by the way, she had one flaw, right? You know what her flaw was? She was a little bit dark skinned, she looked like a Brazilian girl, Brazil. Shagrimana. So this, the truth is, right, that for the man, it's like being dark is actually considered to be good. For the woman, they say, being light is more, beautiful, right? In the classic, rendition, this is more like the classic, accepted, whatever, thing, whatever. So the point is, right, that she was a little bit dark, they say, a little bit like, whatever. Not like, black, but she was like a little bit dark skin. Right. They say, like, they call that sallow, greenish, whatever you want to call it, right? So you got the idea, right? So anyway, the point is she was very beautiful. They took her. So what happened was, right, that, can you imagine he tried all the women, he tried every one of them. First of all, they had to prepare, makeup, all kinds of things, right? Skin toning, all kinds of therapy for the skin, for the hair, right? To do everything. There was a special process they had to go through. This took like weeks. Can you imagine? To prepare themselves to be worthy to even to come into the king's room. I'm not talking to marry him, right? Just to come in there, they had to prepare. The skin had to be softened, right, exactly. The baths, all kinds of things, therapy, all kinds of things. Yeah, unbelievable, right? The process was painstaking process. Right, so this is exactly what happens. You understand? So in the end, what happened was that, right, Achashverosh fell in love with her right away. Love at first sight. He went crazy for her.
The plot is still off.
Yeah, not yet. Right, we're not talking about that yet. Right. So what happens? Right, he goes crazy for her. Right away, falls in love, madly in love. Right, and all the other ones, he doesn't even care for them. Right, in other words, compared to her, they're all not like nothing for her, like zero. They say, by the way, the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave her a special grace that it should be like that. Because really, according to nature, it shouldn't have been really like that so much, so extreme like that. But that's the way it turned out. So what happened was, right, that he takes her, marries her, right? So now, what's the interesting thing over here, right? They say that after he marries her, so there's a halakhic issue over here. This lady's married to Mordechai. So now she's married to two men. What kind of thing is this, right? What kind of, right? So the question is, what happened to the marriage with Mordechai now?
I don't know.
How does it, you can't really annul marriage like that, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So especially when you're married to a goy, the marriage with the goy is annulled, it doesn't take any effect, according to halakha, There's no effect to that. So what happens like this, right? That they say the Chazal, that she was actually able to go back to Mordechai also. Right? To live with him. Can you imagine? This was allowed to do that. How is such a thing like that, right? Can you imagine going with two men at one time? Yeah, this is the way it was. So what happens like this, right? That they say the Chazal that she was able to go back. You know why? Because every time that he would take her, it was like rape. It was like being forced. Because if you refuse him, he'll kill you. You understand? So it was like you have like a dagger on your neck. It's like a knife on your neck. You don't want?
Okay, I understand.
That's it.
Why
Finished.
did Mordechai offer her to the king?
They didn't offer. He tried to hide her. You understand? But they found her.
He tried to hide
Yeah,
her.
they had they have their methods. You know what I mean?
Okay, they found her.
Yeah, they have their methods. So they found her. They have spies, all kinds of things. You know how it is, right? So what happened was they found her. It was against his will, but what happened? That's the way it was. So right now, she's allowed to go back to him. You know why? Because she's anusa. She's raped. She's being raped every time. Every time he takes her, is a rape. So what does that mean? She's not allowed to initiate anything with him. You understand? Only when he summons her. You've been summoned. That's it. That's the idea. You understand? So she was going with him, and then going back to Mordechai at the same time. Can you imagine? This is unbelievable, right? If the Torah wouldn't tell you such a thing, you would say, I'm telling you nuts. So, nutty stuff, right? Crazy. This is crazy. So, by the way, according to the Kabbalah, there's something even deeper over here. I say it right away. The Arizal talks about this, They say that really, it wasn't actually her who was sleeping with Achashverosh. What does that mean? There was a double over there. Like they say, right, that now the president's wife has a double. They're saying that. So this lady also had a double. Okay. Okay. So what's the story? What double are we talking about here? What double? Who brought the double? So they say that Kadosh Baruch Hu, what he was doing was that he was bringing a demon, right, and making the demon look like her, and the demon would go with Achashverosh. So it was actually the demon who was sleeping with Achashverosh. You understand? She was not sleeping with him, but it looked like it was. That's what the Arizal says. This is something very deep over here.
Fine, then keep the demon with Achashverosh, keep what's her name with Mordechai, and problem solved.
Right. But she had to be. See, the thing is that she had to be present over there. You know what I mean? But when it comes to the actual act, you know what I mean? She would stay in the background, and the demon would come and sleep with him. You understand? That's what it says. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable, right?
Yes.
You got a lot to talk about with your wife when you go home.
You have to talk about if the demon is there,
Okay.
then make the demon permanent with the Hashverosh.
Okay, that's a different story.
Why can't you do that?
God has calculations, whatever. We can't get into these details now. You know what I mean? Let's just.
Don't tell me about this.
Okay, no, this is okay though. So anyway, the point is like this, right? Now comes. This is the situation. So, at this time, Haman was promoted over here, right? At this time.
Just because he was stepped out of line and gave him a okay.
Good question, right? Yeah, it's a good question when you're asking. So why was he promoted? What's the reason why? Because they say, right, that since he hit a bullseye with this analysis that he made regarding Vashti, that she had to be killed. So therefore, Achashverosh promoted him because of that. Can you imagine? Because he said, listen, you told me the right thing. That was the right thing to do. I have to admit it, even though I had to clench my teeth, but this was the right thing to do. So therefore, he was promoted to be now the top minister. You understand? He started out in the back of this bus, right? He was number 7. Now all of a sudden he's number 1.
God works in mysterious ways.
Exactly. That's the idea, right? So what happens is now, right? Haman now thinks he's a big shot, right? He thinks now, I'm only second in command. Soon I'll be the king too. He said, I'm gonna pave my way into the kingdom also. This guy, will be history soon. I will take over everything. Understand? So his ego now got inflated, right? 1,000-fold. All of a sudden, became a big shot, whatever, posing for pictures, videos, interviews, Forbes magazine, Wall Street Journal, big shot, big wise man, big sage, all of a sudden, right, big shot, whatever. They say, by the way, the Chazal, that Haman was also a very wealthy man. They say he was one of the wealthiest people who ever lived. Multi-billionaire, this guy was. So he had a lot of wealth, which is fitting for his position, whatever. So they say also, by the way, another interesting thing. They say that he was from Amalek, right? Haman. What does that mean? That this whole story, right, has a whole background over here. You have to understand the background. The background is like this, right? That if you remember, maybe we spoke about this before. I don't know if you heard me, but we talked about the issue that Shaul, right, the king Shaul, was commanded to go wage a war with Amalek. This was one of the things that he was commanded by God. So what happened was they killed everybody except the king, right? The king was left alive. He had mercy on him. He was a very gentlemanly guy, very gentle, very savoir-faire, very charming fellow, right? Whatever. He must have been like George Bush, something like this, one of these guys. So the father I'm talking about. So what happens like this, right? That now Shaul had mercy on him. It didn't kill him. So what happened was that because of that, Amalek was not wiped out. One was left over. He had relations with some woman, and he had children, and Amalek came from there. So that's why the Megillah, right? If you look in the Megillah, he calls Haman Agagi. You know what's Agagi? Agag was the king of Amalek, right? So that was his name, right? Meaning what? The title of their kings was called Agag. Just like Paro, was the king of Egypt, right? So their king was called Agag. So what happened was, right, Agag was captured by Shaul, not killed, and from him came Haman. Can you imagine? So this was actually right the tikkun over there, right? You understand? The whole tikkun was that now had to come Mordechai, right, who was from the family of Shaul, had to metaken, had to fix this problem. He was probably a reincarnation of Shaul. You understand? So what did he have to do? He had to fix the problem. That he had mercy on Agag, he didn't kill him. Now he has to kill Haman. Take care of him now, right? Finish him off. This is exactly what happened. Understand? So Kadosh Baruch Hu sent him for that reason, because he had mercy on Agag. So now he has to come back and take care of it. So what happens is, right, that the whole point is now, right, comes Haman and makes himself into icon, a god. Everybody has to bow down to me. I'm divine. He made himself divine, just like Paro did. All these Rashaim. They said I'm a god, whatever. That's the idea, right? So Haman was also one of them.
Okay, Achashverosh made himself divine.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't manage to do that. Haman beat him to it, right? He beat him to it. He gave it to the idea. Right? He had the brainstorm before him, right? Whatever. So what happens is, right, that Haman now turns himself into divine. So what does that mean? Everybody's got to bow down to me, make me into a god, praise the Lord, Haman, praise the Lord. Right, so now it comes, right, and he wants also Mordechai to bow down to him as well, right? And Mordechai was in that vicinity, by the way, in the palace where Achashverosh was. What was he doing over there? You know what I mean? That's the question, right? What's his business over there? He wasn't one of the ministers at that time. Later on, he became minister. You know what I mean? But at that time, he was not. So they say that Achashverosh, he had a great deal of respect for the Jewish rabbis, for the high court that they had, Sanhedrin. So therefore, what he told them was, you know what, I want you to make the Sanhedrin in my palace. I'll give you a special room, chamber for that. I want it to be in my auspices, under my auspices, you know what I mean? So can you imagine, he put the rabbis over there, in his own palace, to have them over there deliberating. So that's why Mordechai was there as well. This is the idea. This is what the Gemara tells us. Unbelievable, right? This is an unbelievable story. So what happens is, right, that Mordechai, that means he's always walking in and out. And so is Haman, right? They're always crossing paths. How are you? How are you today? How are you feeling? So what happened was that, right, that Mordechai was the only one who refused to bow down to Haman. Everybody else was bowing down. Mordechai is a Jewish guy, He says, well, I'm going to bow down to you, you filthy idol, making yourself into an idol. I'm going to bow down to you.
And the other members of Sanhedrin bow down, or they didn't either?
It's a good question. I'm not sure what happened over there, right? I'm not sure. It doesn't talk about that.
Okay.
Very good question. I wish I could tell you. So what happens like this, right? That Haman gets furious with that, right?
Sure.
What? Everybody's bowing down. What's you Jew? You don't bow down to me, right? I made myself into a god. I made myself divine, and you don't want to bow down. So what happens like this, right? That Haman starts to now devise, schemes in his head how to take revenge, right? To retaliate. But he said, you know what? Since this guy refuses to bow down to me, not only am I going to take him, I'm going to take all his people as well. You know what I mean? Because he was anti-Semite. Haman was, Amaleki, So he was Amalek, so that's their job. They're doing their job, you know what I mean? So, you can't expect them to give up their job. So, therefore, right, what happened was that he devised a plan to rub out all the Jews. That's what happened, right? Because of what happened with Mordechai. So, they say, by the way, that, interesting, right? That Mordechai, the fact that he refused to bow down to Haman, they say, what's the problem? I mean, like people also bow down to other ministers, or to kings. Kings, in the Bible you find all kinds of places where people bow down to kings and ministers. Even Avraham Avinu bowed down to the ministers that were in Shechem, right? To the lords over there. It says twice in the pasuk, he bowed down to them, he prostrated to them. So if Avraham Avinu did it, why don't you want to do it? What, you're better than Avraham Avinu?
Give me a definition of bow down. Get on your knees or just...
We're talking about like totally on the ground, like
you do it on Yom Kippur.
Right, prostration, right, exactly, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what bow down is.
Even more eloquently than we do in Yom Kippur, right? We don't even know how to do it. They really know how to do it, you know what I mean? With all that, all that, whatever, the pomp. So what happens is like this, right? What's the reason why? So they say, the Gemara says, the reason was because he had Avodah Zarah also on his chest, like a necklace over there, So when you bow to him, you're also bowing down to that idol over there. So that's the reason why Mordechai didn't want to bow down to him. You know what I mean? Because he was like bowing down to the idol as well. I want to tell you something interesting, by the way. The Zohar Kadosh says regarding this that Mordechai made a mistake. We don't find this in other place. They say he shouldn't have done that. What does that mean? That there was a way that he could have done it, that it wouldn't have been so conspicuous that he's bound down to the idol, as if he's bound down to the person only. You know what I mean? So therefore, right? Why did he have to? Why did he have to risk the life of the whole Jewish people? You know what I mean? Because of this idea. The Zohar Kadosh says he should have bowed down. He should have found a kosher way to do it. There are kosher ways. There are all kinds of issues. A person, we're not going to get into that now, right?
No,
It's a pretty complicated issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to study up this kind of thing to explain. But the point is, right? The Zohar Kadosh says, there was a mistake over there by Mordechai, because you're risking the people, the lives of millions of people over here. You know what I mean? You have to think about what you're doing. Nevertheless, he didn't want to bow down, right? They say, by the way, that's why they call him, right, Yehudi, right? In the Megillah, right? It says Mordechai HaYehudi. Why Yehudi? They say, right, anybody who rejects idolatry is called Yehudi, right? A Jew. What's the essence of a Jew? He doesn't want to bow down to any idol, no idolatry. He doesn't want to go to church. Doesn't want to go to the Vatican, right? All kinds of things like this. He doesn't want to go to any of these places. Why? He doesn't want to have any idolatry. The person who's a real Jew, this is a defining term of what a Jew is. I will not bow down to any other God. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Fine, but when you go to the church, you don't bow down to anybody. You just
right. But the fact that you're in there, there's you're praying to that idol, whatever, you're accepting the idol, Right. No, that's also true, but that's also a problem there. You know what the problem is? That, if you want to know, Jimmy, the problem is like this. Even if you just go in there, they say, right, that a place like that, which is full of tumah, of impurity, what happens is that there's a lot of impure forces over there, and they cling to you, and they can defile you. When you go in there, bring all kinds of bad ideas into your head, into your soul. So they say because it's an impure place, you should not go into that chamber. Where they pray. You know what I mean? We're not talking about the gym, where they play basketball.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that. Right? We're not talking about it. We're talking about the prayer room. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You get the idea, right? Whatever. So anyway, the point is, right, that
God forbid if you go in, that's it, you come out converted or
not converted, but it's going to defile you. That's going to bring you some, bad influence there. They say, by the way, you know what the mashal is, right? The allegory is like this, right? When you go into a place where there's perfume over there. So you're going to come out smelling like perfume. That's the idea. You got the idea. You know what I mean? That's the idea. The perfume was there. Okay, whatever. So the point is like this, right? That comes now, right? Mordechai, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to save the Jewish people from the impending doom that's going to be decreed upon them. So what he does is Mordechai now, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them a chance now to save the whole Jewish people. We're talking about before the decree was made. So what happened was like this, right? Mordechai was actually in the palace, and as we said, he was roaming around there all the time. He got a free pass. He can go in here, go in there, right, whatever. So what happens like this, right? That he one day he happens to be strolling around, right, and he hears two people talking to each other, right? Two guys over there, right? So who was that? Bigtan and Teresh, right? These two guys were from a different nation, right? Tarsi, they were Tarsi. Tarsebi. That's how it says the Gemara. That's the nation that they came from, Tarsebi. So what happened was that these guys were the drink servers of Achashverosh, right? They used to, the bartenders, you know what I mean? Bring them cocktails, this kind of thing, pina colada, gin and tonic, nice, all kinds of, right? Okay. Daiquiri, right? Strawberry daiquiri, all kinds of things, right? Every day something else, right? So what happened was that these guys were like, all of a sudden, they were working their job for quite a while. What happened was that all of a sudden, right, the job became unbearable for them. That's what they said, right? So they were talking to each other, and they said, this king is driving us crazy now. We can't bear this job anymore. One time the job was bearable. Now it became unbearable. So what made it unbearable? What's so bad? To be a bartender is so bad? So you know what the Chazal say, right, about this amazing story, right? They say that Achashverosh was like he increased his drink capacity all of a sudden, right? He was drinking all the time, day and night, right? Can you imagine? Give me this, give me drink this drink. Give me a beer. Now give me a Heineken. Give me a Budweiser. Right? Give me this. Give me that. Right? Gin and tonic. Right? So they're going like nuts. Like each one has to be prepared, and served, like a king. You know what I mean? You can't just bring him like a glass. It has to be done in a royal way, a royal manner. You know what I mean? It has to be done. Kol hakavod. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. So what happens is like this, right? That he's demanding drinks day and night, right? 24 hours a day. This guy's going for drinks, So they said, we can't take it anymore, So can you imagine? They were so sick of this situation, they planned to kill him because of that, to assassinate him, because he was driving them crazy. So the Chazal explained, by the way, what's the reason why? I heard this from my rabbi, by the way, He told us the reason why all of a sudden he was drinking so much. You know why? Because he was so in love with Esther. He was being with her day and night. Can you imagine? Non-stop. Like gagoy. Like a chicken. Two chickens get together. You know what I mean? Puck, 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 puck. 24 hours a day. He couldn't stop. He was so in love with it. He was infatuated. You understand? So the guy's all sweating all the time, drinking. Drink more drinks, more drinks. Can you imagine such a thing like this? So he's driving them crazy. He says, this is what's going on. Can you imagine such a thing like this? So, wow, they said, listen, we got to wipe this guy out. We got to put something in his drink, We'll poison the drink. So who's overhearing this conversation? Mordechai. Can you imagine? He's in the background over there, listening in on this. Oh, I see. Right, so the Chazal says something interesting, by the way. Why did I mention to you their nation, Tarsi? They were Tarsi Bichnen, Not Tarsi Bichnen. So they, that means that they were not speaking in the language of Persia, They were speaking Tarsi.
Yeah.
You understand? So how did Mordechai know to understand his language? He's a Jew, this guy, What's to you Tarsi? How do you understand Tarsi? It's like I understand like Chinese. Like what's to be Chinese? What's my business over there? So I say right that Mordechai knew all the 70 languages that were at that time. You understand? Why is that? What's the reason why? Because they say right that whoever was on the Sanhedrin, on the High Court, he had to know right those languages. In other words, they had to know all the languages between all the judges. Every language has to be covered. Why is that? Because if a witness comes, right, to testify on some matter, they have to listen to the witness in his language. They can't do a translation. So there has to be some judge over there, at least one guy, who can hear their testimony in their original language. Right? So this is the reason why it had to be like that. So Mordechai knew all the 70 languages. Can you imagine? Such a big genius like this, whatever. So, okay, fine. So therefore he also knew Tarsi. Tarsi, I see. So So what happens like this now, right? Mordechai comes to the king's right people, those ministers over there. He tells them, he says, what's going on over there? These guys want to kill the king, right? So you better do something about it. Make sure that these guys are taken care of. Otherwise, we're gonna have an assassination over here. So they got word of it, and they found out that it was true. They overheard some, right? They put some, they said they found it was actually true, whatever. So they killed them, they hung them, these two got hung. And, right, also, this was recorded, you understand, this whole thing. There was a record made of it.
Knew about it.
Right, the king knew about it for sure. He was notified, yes. Okay. He was notified, and the records were made also, right? Chronicles, Yes. King's Chronicles, the records were made. So this was actually the salvation of the Jewish people, you understand? Why is that? Because when later on, once the decree was made, so what actually saved them? The fact that Ahasuerus saw that Mordechai did this for him. He saved his life, you understand? So therefore he was willing to save the Jews because of this. This was the actual salvation, right, of the Jews, this whole thing. But this happened before, this whole episode. Right. Understand? But this, in the background, whatever, tucked away.
God planted the magic seed.
That's it, right. So they say, from there, the Chazal say in the Gemara, they say that before HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a decree on the Jews, he already makes their salvation before that. You know what I mean? It's already ready there. It's ready and made, so just to be, it has to be applied. That's all. But it's already done. So this is exactly what happened with the Jews. You understand? The salvation was already there. So now, all of a sudden, right, Haman now does his bidding, right? All of a sudden, he hates the Jews. He hates Mordechai. So he comes to the king, right, and bribes him with silver, money. He tells him, he says, you know what? I want to wipe out the Jews. So he tells him, he says, listen, I'm going to give you money. Let me do what I want with them. Am I holding you too long, by the way?
No.
Okay.
My sister is
okay, good. Okay, fine. So just making sure, right?
No, plenty of time.
Gawasachot.
Till you get tired, I'll get.
Okay, so what happens like this, right? That now tells right, Haman has a discussion with Ahasuerus, right? Ahasuerus tells him, he says, you want to wipe out the Jews? He says, listen to me. He says, let me tell you something. He says, I have nothing against that. They say the Chazal, by the way, that he himself hated the Jews more than Haman. Can you imagine? He was a bigger anti-Semite than Haman. So then, why did he want to wipe them out? What's the reason why? Right? Why didn't he wipe them out himself?
Because he's the king.
Understand? He should have devised it himself, this whole thing. So he told Haman, he said, he says, I also want the same as results as you. What do you think? He says, I'm any less than you? I'm more than you. But he says, there's one thing, one difference between me and you. You're in fantasy world. I'm a reality guy. I'm realistic. Understand? I'm grounded. You're flying in the sky somewhere. He says, I'll tell you something. He says, I know that what has to be done. I know. But he says, I'm afraid. I have to tell you, he says, because the Jews, they're very powerful people. They're very smart. They're very strong. They may start a rebellion against me. They may pull some tricks. Go to Congress, do some lobbying over there. APAC, all kinds of things. It's going to be right. He says they may have me removed. They may destroy me, my kingdom. He says I don't want to mess with them. He says they have their God. He says I'm afraid of their God. So the God. He says their God is the real God.
They sentenced one Hasidic 4 years. Hasidic. They sentenced 4 years. Almost said Hasidics. To the money laundering.
So what happens is like this, right? Now, I understand. So what happens is that Haman tells him, he says, don't worry. He says, their God left them, don't worry. He says, they have a God, you're right. But he says their God left them because they're sinners, they're not together, they don't have unity, they're apart, they're fighting with each other, factionalism, factions.
The second Beit HaMikdash is erected or no?
What? I'm sorry?
The second Beit HaMikdash.
No, not yet. No. They stopped the building, as we said. It was halted, right? It was halted, yeah. So he tells them like
this.
They're
going to rebuild?
Yeah, they're going to rebuild, right? So they said, Haman tells him, he says, how do you know that their God is gone? He says, what do you, prophet? What, do you have a prophecy? So he says, no, he says, I just see, it says the way they behave. They're not together, there's factions, fighting with each other, there's Chacham Abraham, Chacham Pinchas, this faction, that faction, you know what I mean? Big joke, right? There's all kinds of things, there's downstairs, upstairs, there's the downstairs lecture, upstairs lecture, right? All kinds of things. There's all kinds of things going on. So they're all separate, they don't have unity. He says, don't worry. He says, when they're not together, Hashem was not with them. He also slandered them in other ways, by the way. You know what he said, right, to the king? He says, not only that, he says, not only I'm not afraid of their God, because God left them, because they're sinners and they're divided, but he says, besides that, he says, you should know, they hate you. They hate the king. They hate the kingdom. He says, they're against you. They want to destroy you. So, Achashverosh tells him, how do you know that? What, they want to rebel against me? He says, you have some information on that? So he says, I'll give you an example. He says, you don't understand what I'm talking about. He says, they consider you to be like worse than a fly, like a cockroach. How do you know that? What does that mean? He says, their rules, they have these rules in their Torah. So he says, if a fly falls into the wine, right, they can just remove the fly and drink the wine. No problem, there's no problem with that, halakha. But he says, if you touch their wine, they have to spill it out. You're worse than a fly, he tells them. So he know what to do slander, you know what I mean? He had a mouth. Can you imagine? So he told him things like this, you understand? He said, they don't have respect for you, they hate your kingdom. They're waiting till you fall down and they rebuild their Beit HaMikdash. That's what they're waiting for. So he told them all kinds of words of slander like this. So once Achashverosh hears all these things, right, he got very convinced by, what is that? It's cashew? Ha'etz. Amen. So tells him like this, right?
That with honey. This is plain.
So tells him,
very healthy.
Tells him Achashverosh, says, you know what? He says, I'm gonna grant you your request. He says, you have official rights to do what you want to do. I'm gonna give my signet ring. He says, I'm taking it off, giving it to you. That means you're empowered now to do what you have to do. So I'm gonna make a special decree for that also. It's gonna be published, right, in archives. It's gonna be archived.
Yeah, Haman does whatever he wants.
Right, exactly. Regarding this issue, right? He has free hand to do what he wants to do. So he tells him, he says, go and do what you have to do. He says, I don't want your money. I'm rich. I'm a wealthy man. I don't need your silver. Go and take it back to your, take it back to your, stuff it in your, what. So it tells him like this, right? So Achashverosh, Haman is very happy, right? Wow, very happy guy, right? Now he can do his bidding, right? Whatever. They sent out letters all over the kingdom. You know what I mean? That on this and this date, right? We're going to exterminate all the Jews. It's going to be like total extermination. On one day, can you imagine? One day it's going to be done. Faster than Hitler even. Right? Hitler took him several years. We're going to do it in one day. the whole thing, right? So this is exactly what he's telling to the people. He sends out the letters all over the world, right? International, wherever they are, the Jews, right? Wherever they may be, on this day we're going to kill every one of them, right? So gather up together, right? Every town, every city, every country, right? And find all the Jews and gather them up and finish them off. That's it, right? That's what he tells them, right? So what happens like this, right? And now they heard about this decree. You understand? Obviously, everybody knew. It became international news, right? All of a sudden, it's all over the place, right? So now, right? Haman and Esther devised, right? Not Haman. I'm sorry, Mordechai and Esther, right? So Mordechai tells Esther, sends her a letter. He says, "Listen, you've been grafted into the kingdom." So he says, "I'm sure God brought you in there for this reason only, to save the Jews from destruction." So he says, "You have to now pull some stunt over here to save us. This is what the reason why you put in there." And he says, "Don't think." He tells Esther like this, right? He says, "Don't think that if you try to save yourself and to let us to abandon us, you're also going to die in the end." He says, "You're going to also be getting killed. All the Jews are going to be killed, including you." So he tells her, right? He says, "You better do what I tell you now, right? Don't try to be like just save yourself and be comfortable." He tells her, "No, this is not the way to do it." So he sends her a letter like this. So he says, "What I want you to do is like this." Gives her instructions, right, step by step, what to do. He says, "I want you to go into the king, right, go into his palace, go into his chamber, and beg for mercies, right, for the Jewish people. Do what you have to do. Use some kind of a scheme, Girls, ladies are very sneaky, they know how to do all the tricks. You know what I mean? So he says, do some, manipulation,
Okay.
Mess up his head a little bit, Dalbride between, so Dalbride, put some stick on him, So that's what she tells him. So she sends back to Mordechai, right, a letter. Says, "What do you want me to do? You want to go in there on my own volition? I'm risking my life to do that." Why? He says, "Because there was a law over there in the country. If you go into the king, without permission, if you haven't been summoned, liable to death. Can you imagine? So if you go in there, they check, oh, okay, you have an appointment with the king? Let's see, right? If you're not on the roster, they'll kill you right on the spot. Execution.
Oh.
Right? This was a cool kingdom, This is not like today, This is not Trump and, right. This is not Trump and Pence, You can degrade them and deride them and make fun of them, mock them, and nothing will happen to you. Over here, you understand? One little thing, that's it, finished. You know what I mean? That's all. The story's over. So what happens is like this now, right? That comes Esther and tells him, says, "You want me to risk my life? Should I do it? If you tell me to do so, I will do so. I'm risking my life over here now." So says Mordechai, "You got to do it." He says, "Go in. Hashem will help you. You got to plead for our lives. This is what you were put there for." So she says, "Okay, if that's what you say, I'll do it. You're my rabbi. You're my husband. What can I do? You're everything to me. So I'll do whatever you say." Okay, fine. So she decides to go in right there. But they said, before she went in, she told all the Jews. They announced, right, there should be a public fast for 3 days. We're going to fast for 3 days. Ta'anit. Tzom for 3 days, not 1 day, right? Right. Ta'anit Esther. That's what we do tomorrow. We're going to do it, right? So this the basis of this fast we're doing is from this Ta'anit that they did over there. So they fasted for 3 days, the whole Jewish people. Can you imagine? 3 days, 3 nights, nothing. This is like a very, very powerful fast. 72 hours. You know what I mean? Nothing. So they fasted for 3 days, and then in the end, she went in to Ahasuerus. So there was a rule over there like this, right? The rule was, if you go in without being invited, you're liable to death. The only way to save you is one thing, right? The king has to hand you his scepter. If he hands you the scepter, that's it. Your life is spared. Otherwise, you're gone, right? So they say the Chazal. Jochi. That's right. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah. So, so it happens like this, right? That she at that time was very weak because she was fasting for 3 days. Can you imagine? She went there after 3 days of fasting, so she was like about to faint. She could barely hold herself up. They say, by the way, that the Chazal, right? The Chazal say that the Kadosh Baruch Hu sent her angels over here to help her. One to support her body so she shouldn't fall, because she could have just fainted, and want to find favor in the eyes of Achashverosh. They should have a special favor, Siramaze, something like a special grace. She should have a special grace. When Achashverosh sees her, he's gonna be like knocked out. Like can't resist her, irresistible. So what happened was like this is exactly what happened. Like will sell these angels over there. So she knocks, she goes to the gate of the palace, and she stands there with the guards. She says, "Okay, I want to go and see the king." Says, were you summoned by the king to come in?" Even the queen had to be summoned. Can you imagine? She was the queen. You can see how cruel they were, by the way, these people. How the cruelty was amazing, right? So, one false move and you're dead. That's it, right? You understand? So he says, "No, I was not summoned." So they told her, they said, "Do you know you're risking your life? Because if you go in there and it doesn't give you the scepter, you're gone, right? You're going to be the new sacrifice over here. Just like the old wife, right? Like Vashti." Oh. So it happens like this right now. She says, "Okay." He says, "No problem." He says, I'll take the risk, right? I take the risk, right? So she goes in there, right? And Hashverosh sees her, right? Huh? You coming in here without being summoned? Shame on you, So they say right away, this guy was a Rasha, So he got angry, His heart was inflamed with anger because she came in without being summoned. Can you imagine? They told him. They said, the queen is coming in. The queen is coming in? Who summoned her over here? Who summoned her? Getting red, smoke coming out of his ears. You know what I mean? So what happened was like this, right? That Kadosh Baruch Hu found making a special grace for her. So once he saw her, how beautiful she was, he says, okay, come in, give her the scepter. So she comes in. Gave her the scepter, came in. Yeah. So it happens like this now. She comes in there, right? And she tells right. So Achashverosh asks her. He says, "What's your request, Queen Esther?" I says, "Why did you come in?" He says, "Tell me what your request is." He says, "I'll give you anything you ask for, even half of the kingdom. I'll give you until half the kingdom. You want half the kingdom?" She found so much favor in his eyes. He was willing to give her half the kingdom. Can you imagine? He was ruling over the whole world. This was half the world. So what happens is like this, right? That Esther tells her, he says, I'm not asking for something, great. He says, all I'm asking is one thing. He says, I want you to make a party for me tomorrow, right? A special banquet. And I want you and Haman to come, right? Haman wasn't the main minister at that time, you understand? Ubedur, Haman Harashach. Right? So he says, I want you and Haman to come to my party. I'm going to make a special banquet for both of you.
So she's making a party.
Right. That's what she said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Inviting Haman.
Right. So now, right? Okay. So the king says, you want us to come to the party? He says, that's all you came to request? He says, no problem. He says, no problem. We'll be there tomorrow. What time? 8 o'clock? Okay, we'll be there sharp, right? 8 o'clock sharp. No problem, right? Me and Haman, we're coming. So she, brings them to a party. They have drink, eating, drinking, having a good time, enjoying themselves, merry time, whatever. So, okay, party's over, going home, right? Next day, again, she comes to him and says, you know what? Says, I also want to make another request to you. Right?
The whole 9 yards, the scepter, not something.
Right. Yeah, something like that. Doesn't really say what happened there, but he says, I want to make another request. So he says, okay, what's the request this time? I'll give you until half the kingdom. Can you imagine? Again, same thing, right? So he says, you know what? He says, I'm making another party tomorrow. I want you and Haman to come again to the party. For second party, right? Party number 2. Right? So the king says, okay, whatever you say, we'll come, okay. But in his mind already, you understand? Started to flow some thoughts in his mind. He says, what the heck is going on over here? Why is she making a party for Haman again, right? So meaning what? This arouses jealousy, you understand? This is exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to arouse his jealousy, that he should start to hate Haman. Gachelos, He started to think in his head already, like after they separated, they went their own separate ways. So he says, what the heck? What's going on over here? He says, maybe these two are, plotting to kill me, to assassinate me. They're making these parties. They're gonna come in there and pull some trick on me, assassinate me. He says something is very fishy over here. So he says something is not kosher. Nevertheless, right, he decides to go through with it, but he's got very big suspicions. You know what I mean? His head. So this time, right, they come to the party, the banquet. The bar, the food, the buffet, everything's beautiful. So it comes Ahasuerus, right, to Esther again, right? She finds favor in his eyes at the party. You know what I mean? So she says, "What's your request now?" He says, "Tell me, give me your request. You wanna ask me something? I'll give you until half the kingdom." So she said, it says the only request I have is one thing. It says, there's a very wicked man that you have in the kingdom, right? One big Rasha, Ubeduri, that he wants to wipe out my people. He wants to exterminate my people. Haman. Okay, so I'll explain to you. He was there. Yeah, he was there for sure. Yeah. So it happens like this, right? That he says he wants to. So the king, right? Starts to get angry. Loses temper. He says, "Who wants to do such a thing like that? Says, there was somebody who wants to kill you. You tell me who it was." So the problem was like this, right? He didn't know that Esther was Jewish at that time. You understand? This is the whole thing, right? He made the decree to wipe out the Jews, but Esther himself, he didn't know that she was Jewish. This is the reason why he was surprised. Says, who made such a decree like that? So it says, you know who it was? It says, it was this dirty, low-life slime. Haman! So Haman hears that, right? Right, he's there, right? So all of a sudden, right, he's about to faint, he's about to tawarda, he pulls, oh. Right, so you understand that what she pulled over here? This trick was amazing. You know why? Because first of all, she aroused the jealousy of Ahasuerus by inviting Haman. Like maybe they're doing some, they're plotting against him. Maybe there's some kind of affair going on between them. You understand? That's number one. Now all of a sudden, right? This was the killer. This was the killer point, right? Then on the coffin. You know why? Because Haman already told him to kill his first wife. You understand? Now he's coming to kill the second wife as well. So he says, look what this low life does, right? This low life, no good, right? Slime of the earth. He killed my first wife, now he wants to kill my second wife too.
Ahasuerus gave the permission to Haman to kill the Jews. Why was he so surprised? He forgot that he gave
because he didn't know that his wife was Jewish. You understand? So this is what happened, right? So now he took it personally. You know what I mean? You want to kill my second wife too? You think I'm going to find another one like this? That was the idea. You understand?
But he found out that she was Jewish? When? During the banquet or?
So what happened? Yeah, during the banquet, right? So right. He told her at this point. He said, you know what? I'm also Jewish.
She told him.
Right. Now at this point, right? Until this point, he didn't know anything about that. He was asking her, by the way, and he didn't reveal.
She lied.
Right. He didn't reveal. She didn't say anything. He said, I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be a surprise. One day I'll surprise you. I'll tell you. She was playing games with him like this. You understand? So what happens is like this, right? That they say, now that Haman heard this, he totally decided to kill. Now that Ahasuerus heard this, he totally decided to kill Haman. As we said, because of the jealousy, because of this, right now, this vendetta that he has against him, he wants to kill another wife. You understand? So what happened was, right, that now he was totally, in anger and wrath, Ahasuerus. So what happened was, right, instead of strangling Haman at that point, right, thinking, strangling with his hands, what he did was he went out to the garden, take a stroll a little bit, to think like what to do, to cool down a little bit, and then he would come back in, and all right, he would do what he had to do. He already decided pretty much what he wanted to make sure, think about it a little bit. So he goes out to the courtyard to start walking, strolling around there, right? All of a sudden, right, what happens is the Haman comes now, right, to Esther, and starts to beg for his life. He says, please, he says, don't do this to me, save me. Save my life. He says, spare me, I'll do anything you say. Just spare my life. Don't have me killed now. Right? So what happened was, as he was begging for his life, they say, right, the Chazal, there came an angel, right, and pushed him onto her, right? So we need what? That he fell on her, Can you imagine? The angel pushed him, right? So now Ahasuerus looks into the window, says, look what he's doing. He's trying to rape my wife in front of me, in front of my face. That's it. So I'm going to take care of him now. I'm going to kill. So he comes in there, right? And he says, what's going on here? He says, you want to kill the Jewish people? So he has them. What happened was that he had them look into the records to see, right, what happened with Mordechai, right? That he saved him his life also. You understand? So he said, this guy, this Mordechai who saved your life, Haman wants to kill him, hang him on the gallows. He made a special gallows for him, and he wants to kill all the Jewish people, exterminate everybody, all Jewish people. So he says that this guy saved my life and he wants to kill him. He says, kill him instead. So he tells him, you understand? So he says, go and hang him on those gallows that he made for Mordechai. understand? They say, by the way, there's another trick over here, right? What happened? There was another interesting insight over here. We'll stop here, right? I guess we can't go all night, but the insight was like this, right? That what happened was that they say that one of the reasons why Ahasuerus was such a big anti-Semite. You know why? Because in those days the kings used to have like these fortune tellers, astrologers, whatever, these kind of people. So they used to tell him like, this is gonna be with you, your future is gonna be like this, whatever. So he went to the astrologers. This was like way back, in the good old days. So he went to them and he said, what's gonna be of my kingdom after me? Who's gonna come? I want you to tell me the future. Tell me who is destined to rule after me. So you know what the astrologers told him? They all say the same thing. They said it's going to be a Jewish guy. A Jew is going to take your kingdom. So he said, Jewish guy. See these Jews? They're plotting against me. You know what I mean? So this is why he was so anti-Semitic, this guy. He was this whole thing turned him into anti-Semitic. He was very much worried that the Jews would plot against him. Take his kingdom, because that's what the astrologers told him. So what happened was like this, right? That now, this actually helped the Jews, this whole thing. Why? Why is that? Because once Esther revealed at the party that she was Jewish, right? This really calmed his fears about that. Allayed his fears. You know why? Because he said, So, I'm sorry?
On one hand, they're saving me.
Right.
So if they're saving me, how could they plot it?
I'll explain to you what it means. It's like this, right? So he actually had the thought now, right? He said, you know what? Those astrologers told me that a Jew was going to take my kingdom, right? So I was always afraid of them. I was always, right, fearful of them. But now he says, actually, it's very good. You know why? Because he said, my wife is Jewish. That means it's going to be my son. Comes from a Jewish lady. And he's going to take my kingdom. He says, what's wrong with that? I want my son to take my kingdom. He says, that's no problem. He says, no, that's it. So that's one of the reasons also why. Right? That this also convinced him, you understand? That there was no problem. There was nothing to fear from the Jews. They were good. They were okay. So now that his wife, he finds out that his wife is also Jewish. You understand? So he's very proud, also that she came from kings. You understand? She came from Shaul. They say, by the way, that he was such an austere person, like very, he has like his nose in the air, very like, so he was very pompous kind of guy, So can you imagine he was so pompous that he used to speak with Esther through an interpreter. He wouldn't like speak directly to her, like tell her like through a third party. He used to like tell her things, give her commands, do this, do that. He didn't think it was his level, to speak to her directly. Can you imagine how pompous he was? So they say, by the way, that now that he found out that she was from kings, now he spoke to her directly. Understand why? Because now it's if she comes from kings, okay, she, I can speak to her, right? She's worthy, right, of my speech, right? Exactly. Okay, I guess we'll stop there. There's more to say, but you got the idea. Okay, Chazak Baruch, thanks for coming. Happy Purim, happy easy fast, B'ezrat Hashem. All the blessings to you and your families. God bless.
All of us, thank you.
Okay.